we're going to show you what the world found out about the situation from last weekend. But in the midst of this, I don't want it to get lost that from someone who had knowledge, experience to know, and has seen the alleged weapon, there was no magnification, right? He had a red dot on the rifle, but it's no magnification. So that makes that guy with that experience under that type of pressure much less likely to get anywhere near the target, let alone hit the dude's ear. So I have more questions now than I had last week because I pictured he had a scope. It was sighted in. He's been to the range. It might be believable he still did that, but I've seen evidence since then that now gives me like much more reasonable doubt. And we're going to get to like what the preponderance of evidence now becomes. I have to give you this caveat. There was a graphic last week that we used. It was an NBC graphic. It was inaccurate. I'm going to show you accurate corrections tonight. I'm going to show you why that graphic is wrong. I'm going to show you why almost every graphic you've seen from major news outlets has been wrong in the past week. And I'm going to ask you, is it because they're incompetent and don't know the difference, or because they're trying to like converge people into a lone gunman scenario when they're trying to cover various places where shots were taken? So we're going to get to look at that. But first, we have to kind of show you the things as the audience of the world was shown these things, and then we'll apply the critical thinking, creative problem solving after that. So let's get these new ones on the record. New details on Trump attempt. This comes from WWL-TV. The next one is local police told the Secret Service that they couldn't secure the building. That's CBS Pittsburgh. That's a local station. I grew up like 45 minutes away from wherever this is. I didn't look it up exactly. It could be an hour away from where I grew up. But like I grew up within 20 minutes of that ammo store that they said that kid went to. So I know these local news channels, and it's kind of hilarious to like, oh, that's the hometown news. And what are they giving legit facts? Are they doing legit reporting? Because I didn't have that scrutiny when I lived there. What the Trump gunman did before the attack. Fascinating claims about his Home Depot run and his 5-foot ladder, which it doesn't fit the evidence on. There's a whole bunch of stuff. So we just have to consider it, and then we'll weigh it out, find the contradictions, and sort it. And then the last one, oh no. And then there's also how it happened. Now, this is a popular AI telly video. It's got millions of views. It's an artificial representation. It's a mock-up of the 3D reality. I'm going to bring to your attention errors that are in there. And for someone so forensic and so precise in this, mock-up, and why are you using the wrong data? Why is it's just painting an unreality. It's totally not useful. But a lot of people are like, oh, case closed, right? It's like, we're going to learn more about the Katzenbach memo of this situation. All right. Without further ado, I think that covers this next block. Let's dig into it, and let's learn some new details on the alleged gunman.
We do have new details on what the 20-year-old shooter did before he tried to assassinate former President Donald Trump at a campaign rally on Saturday. CBS's Meg Oliver has the very latest on the investigation from Butler, Pennsylvania.
After their most high-profile security breach in decades, the Secret Service, along with the FBI, briefed lawmakers Wednesday on 20-year-old shooter Thomas Matthew Crooks. A source directly familiar with the briefing tells CBS News that Crooks used his phone to search for images of former President Trump and President Biden online. Crooks also searched the names of FBI Director Christopher Wray and Attorney General Merrick Garland and looked up symptoms of depressive disorder. He visited the site of the attack at least once before the rally. Investigators have yet to discover a motive. The Butler County District Attorney says local police informed the Secret Service before the event that they didn't have the manpower to station a patrol car outside the building where Crooks ended up taking his position. An analysis by CBS News confirmed has found the Secret Service counter-sniper team closest to the shooter likely would have had their line of sight to the building obscured by trees, making it difficult for them to see Crooks clearly. The team farther away fired the single shot that killed him. Minutes after the shooting, cell phone video caught the former president arriving at Butler Memorial Hospital. U.S. Secret Service agents are seen with guns drawn around his SUV before rushing Trump into the ER.
The two other victims who were injured have been upgraded from critical to serious condition. A private funeral is planned for the retired firefighter Corey Comparatori, who was killed. As of this morning, former President Trump will not attend the funeral due to security reasons. Meg Oliver, CBS News, Butler.
at that particular site, we divided up areas of responsibility, but the Secret Service is solely responsible for the design and the implementation and the execution of the site.
The head of the Secret Service is facing tough questions. She first said it was up to local law enforcement to secure the building the shooter got access to, but now she's sharing a different message. KDK's Jennifer Barrasso is live in Butler Township, getting a clearer picture of the communication breakdown during and even before Saturday's rally. Jen.
Ken, we have new information on several key questions. The main one, what law enforcement agency was responsible for securing the building that Thomas Crooks used for his assassination attempt? Butler County District Attorney Rich Goldinger says the Secret Service was told local police couldn't be responsible for securing the AGR building during the Trump rally.
It was indicated we did not have the manpower to take that task on as well, based on our number of officers on duty.
Butler Township Manager Tom Knights confirms that message was sent to the Secret Service 2 days before the Trump rally. Butler Township also told them their team could only handle traffic control. KDK has also learned the Secret Service never responded to those messages.
And do you know what happened in terms of the security plan for that area?
I don't. All I know is our township police department was very clear that we did not have the manpower for it.
So tell me about what was said about what they did to assess the area, the Secret Service.
Yeah, I know they had a walk around with the field. Our officers were part of that walk around. Several buildings were identified as areas of a concern, which it did include the AGR building.
Secret Service Director Kim Cheadle says police were originally supposed to be on the roof. A decision was made to move them inside because of a sloped roof. Cheadle cited safety factors, but it's not clear who made that decision or how it was communicated.
My sources have told me that there was 1 or 2 local SWAT team members in an AGR building near where the shooter Thomas Crooks was. Is that your understanding too?
It is my understanding, yes.
They were inside though?
They were inside, yes.
Okay. Not outside?
No.
Instead, sources say they were looking out the windows with no access to the roof. We've asked who was responsible for that area and what instructions they got from the Secret Service, but no one will comment. And DA Richard Goldinger just telling me right now, I don't know whose responsibility that building was, but somebody should have been there. Now, the FBI is investigating the attempted assassination, and Congress and the Department of Homeland Security have begun inquiries. But the main question that everybody wants to know is how Thomas Crooks pulled off this assassination attempt against former President Donald Trump, and he killed one bystander and he injured 2 others. Reporting live in Butler Township, Jennifer Barrasso, KDK TV News.
New CNN analysis this morning. The crowd at the Trump rally noticed the gunman at least 1 minute and 57 seconds before the assassination attempt, almost 2 minutes. There are also new details on where the shooter was before he opened fire, as agents still work to determine why he opened fire on Donald Trump and the crowd. CNN's Danny Freeman is in Butler, Pennsylvania. You've been following this for us for some time. What can you tell us this morning?
Well, Sarah, I really want to highlight some of the work that our CNN digital video teams have done specifically when it comes to that timeline that you just addressed. Listen, we've seen it ourselves with a lot of videos that have been coming out since Saturday evening. We've also heard it from eyewitnesses, but our team synced up all of that witness video and detailed, as you said, that there was at least a minute and 57-second gap between when people in the crowd, and from different parts of the crowd, I should say, at that Trump rally realized that someone was on top of that roof, and then that distance between when he actually opened fire. So I encourage viewers to take a look at that online, because it really does paint a picture of not only how quickly this happened, but also how many people were noticing something was wrong before, of course, this tragedy struck. But Sarah, I want to detail also what you were talking about, that we are learning new information about some of the movements of the shooter prior to that ultimate shooting. We're talking, of course, about Thomas Matthew Crooks, the 20-year-old from Bethel Park, Pennsylvania. We now know that on Friday evening, he went to his sportsman club that he belonged to. He went to the rifle range there to practice. Then we also know on Saturday morning, he went to a Home Depot and he purchased a ladder. Then shortly thereafter, he went to a local gun store and purchased, as we understand it from law enforcement sources, 50 rounds of ammunition. He then drove to Butler, and once he was on site here at the rally, we do understand that local law enforcement did note him. They noted that he was acting suspicious around the metal detector area, but then, as far as we understand, he was not noticed again until he ultimately was perched on that roof and opened fire at former President Donald Trump. But again, Sarah, the big question that we still don't have an answer to right now is that question of motive. The FBI saying yesterday they still have not found a motive, and that's after interviewing witnesses, law enforcement agents, friends, family, and even being able to crack into his phone. Still no evidence that there was any strong ideological motivation that would have led him up to that roof on Saturday evening. Sarah?
Danny Freeman, those are extraordinary pictures and an extraordinary long amount of time for that gunman to have been sitting there with people noticing, except for the Secret Service. Thank you so much for your reporting there.
We are learning more about the shooter, Thomas Matthew Crooks. In the 48 hours before he opened fire on Donald Trump, the 20-year-old apparently went to a shooting range where he was a member and practiced firing. The next morning, he purchased a ladder and 50 rounds of ammunition. What does all this tell you about what the shooter, what's behind the shooter, or what motive, perhaps?
I think we're still unclear on the motive. I mean, the reports today about they've sort of tried to look in his phone, or they've looked in his phone. They don't. It's not giving them like that sort of eureka moment, right? This like, okay, this is exactly why he did it. We're hearing lots of information that is not neat in the sense that it conflicts with each other. You know, he gave money to a Democratic cause, but is his dad a big Trump supporter? And was he part of the GOP? I mean, none of these are going to fit a perfect narrative. What we do know from the information that you just described is, in a very short period of time, he seems to have sort of thought through, executed, operationalized, and then almost was successful in killing the former president. That's a very tight time frame. It wasn't like he was hoarding bullets for a long period of time. You're talking in the last couple of days. So investigators are going to look at what was happening, what was he saying, and might others have known.
And of course, there is never any guarantee that we will learn what the motive is behind the shooter. But would you expect, given what we know so far, that it's more likely that we would in the next few days or weeks?
I think what we will be able to determine is whether he was motivated by a single ideology or not. This is not your typical sort of lone wolf case. There's no manifesto. There's no sort of, people aren't saying, well, he was clearly this or he was clearly that. We're getting a better understanding of him, but it is not at all clear cut. It may be, like you said, that we never quite know what was going on in his head that would have tied whatever it was he was thinking to assassinating or trying to assassinate Donald Trump. And it may be only he knew, right? And that is the challenge right now.
Trump's rally takes place in Butler, Pennsylvania, roughly 30 miles north of Pittsburgh. The Butler Farm Showgrounds, located at 625 Evans City Road, about 5 miles from downtown Butler. The shooter, Thomas Crook, was smart enough to park his van on Lawrence Avenue, avoiding police and Secret Service officer from investigation and checking. It was also suspected of containing a considerable amount of explosives. This is where he got out and walked all the way to this vantage point, which is this building on the right. He then climbed this ladder located here and moved up to the top of this roof. To help you understand better, let's take a basic look at the position of Trump on stage as well as the shooter. There are 3 important structures or buildings we need to understand. This is the Trump stage, and just above him is the audience section where a selected number of people is seated. This structure is also very important as it is where the Secret Service personnel are located and snipers are positioned. Finally, we have this building where the shooter set up his sniper location. A quick note, the distance from the shooter Thomas Crook, the Trump stage, is around 137 meters, which translates to around 450 feet. While the distance between the shooter and the Secret Service sniper position is around 134 meters, which is approximately 440 feet. When former President Donald Trump was a little into his speech, the shooter squeezed the trigger of his AR-15 rifle, releasing 3 bullets. One of these shots hit the former president on the ear. This was followed by another 5 shots. Possibly one of the bullets missed the former president's head by just a quarter of an inch as he turned to look at a chart statistic located on the left. This move saved his life. From the top angle, this is what it looks like when replaying how the bullet missed Mr. Trump as he moved his head at the last millisecond. Interestingly, this bullet would have hit the former president if his head had been turned towards the audience as shown here in this visualization. All in the videos ahead with detailed minute-to-minute animated timelines until the former president was in his armored SUV. We will also be looking at the respective weapons used by both parties and the 2 scenarios with and without bullet penetrating the skull. At 6:12 p.m. ET, Trump started addressing his supporters and spoke for roughly 6 minutes before the scene erupted into chaos. Trump was in the middle of speaking when someone in the crowd was heard saying, "He's got a gun." As the video captured someone in the crowd repeating, "On the roof, he's got a gun," it's here that 3 shots rang out. A pause and 5 more shots in rapid succession were heard. For some unknown reason, the shooter had a clear line of sight from an elevated level well positioned as a sniper nest. Interestingly, a heavy-duty ladder was also located on the side. It might be a permanent fixture. He aimed with this AR-15, a semi-automatic rifle, which will be discussed in detail later in the video. At around 6:11, he aimed his sights on the former president and squeezed the trigger, releasing the bullet. At 6:11:34, Trump touched the right side of his face. At 6:11:35, Trump took cover as U.S. Secret Service agents rushed to the podium to surround him. "Get down, get down, get down," one of them said. As stated, the gunman was positioned outside the rally venue, approximately 400 to 500 feet away from where Trump was speaking. As discussed, the police sniper was located at this position. They were then alerted and started aiming at the suspected shooter. When ready, the bolt-action rifle bullet traveled a range of 500 feet. However, this weapon can inflict damage at a range of around 1,200 to 1,300 yards. This is well beyond the shooter's 500 feet limit. We will discuss this weapon in more detail later in the video. At this moment, Trump remains low to the ground surrounded by agents, who could be heard on the rally microphone discussing which vehicle would be used to move the former president away from the scene. Seconds later, multiple agents say, "Shooter's down." Law enforcement in tactical gear and rifles are now on the stage. A woman's screams are heard following the sound of another shot. Here's a transcript of the audio at the podium with Trump and Secret Service members. 6:11:41 p.m. Female agent, "What are we doing? What are we doing? Where are we going?" Man indistinctly yelling. 6:11:50. Gunshot, then woman screams. 6:11:58. Male agent 2. "Go around to the spare. Go around to the spare." Spare refers to a spare limousine or SUV. At 6:12 again, male agent 3 appears to say something like, "Move to the spare, hold, hold. When you're ready, on you." At 6:12:01, male agent 2 screams, "Ready." 6:12:02, male agent 3 shouts again, "Move." 6:12:03, male agent 2 screams, "Up." 6:12:03, male agent 3 says, "Move." 6:12:04, male agent 4. He shouts again, "Go, go, go." 6:12:06, male agent 2, "Hawkeye's here." Hawkeye is the code name for the counter-assault team. 6:12:06 again. Female agent 1, "Hawkeye's here, moving to the spare." 6:12:09. Male agent 4.
Because the inaccuracies of that video just stacking up in my head. So again, That's good for the broad strokes. It's bad for the actual and factual. And so to continue to consume that is just building a bunch of inaccuracies in our thinking. But I wanted you to see like how the world is viewing that with such certainty. And it's like, this is how it happened, and it's easily explained, and it's oversimplified, and it leaves out a lot of key things. As if, for instance, first, let me do this so I can prime LD for the next block. And now I'll take you over here. Oh, now I'm going to take you over here. There we go. All right. So earlier today, I did the Autonomy Mindset 3 conference on intellectual self-defense, teaching people how to think through and what is knowledge, what is evidence. At the end, we did a workshop. And at the end of the workshop, we were doing, let's review some headlines. Let's go through some news. Let's think critically on these things. You just heard the really graceful report earlier about the insider trading and how it was an alleged accident, right? But if we move on in that presentation, I wanted to show you, this is the building in question. This is where they washed the blood off. This is where the alleged lone gunman's body was found. This is also the open window. Open. It's an air-conditioned building. Here's the air conditioners. Lots of air conditioners. We'll get to those in a second. The window is open all the way. It opens out. You can clearly see this. This building is where the counter sniper team allegedly is. Allegedly. So why would you take the guy who shot from over here, and in every graphic you just saw, he was not only put over here, but put up at the front of the roof where he definitely was not. So let's go into it a little bit deeper, because this is what we call visual literacy. Are you able to read the situation, and what are the contradictions to that situation? If a building is secure, you're not going to have a window open. Window open means Secret Service should go investigate. That's a potential sniper shooting from cover, blaming Miss Patsy on the roof. I don't know. We have to examine. The Daily Mail with this graphic actually puts the shooter down here in the right position. So that was pretty decent. Nice win for them. But if we go to the next graphic, this comes from AI Telly that you guys just saw. The shooter is supposed to be over here on the back side of the roof, because he used it for cover. So there's a center line down the roof. If you can see my mouse there, center line down the roof. Shooter was on the back side of that, about 15, 20 feet in. This is an 80-foot by 145-foot building. The shooter was definitely 100% not here. So if you're going to go through all the trouble of doing AI telegraphics and making this all 3D for us for millions of viewers, why do you purposefully put the shooter in the wrong place, unless your job is to obscure the people with this open window that plausibly took the shots we're going to hear when we do the forensic analysis in a little bit, because we have to build out the evidence in this court of public opinion. Let's go to, is this the only place that made this error? I don't know. Let's keep looking. Oh, look, here's Grand Theft World last week. We showed you NBC News. Where's the shooter? The shooter's right here on the wrong edge of the building again. Again, it's the wrong building. It's not even the same graphic, because I would say they copied from the other one, but this one at least has the right building in the wrong place. This next one from NBC, it's the wrong friggin' building. In fact, this is the building where the Secret Service or the other counter sniper teams and police were allegedly inside the building and didn't have access to the roof.
Yeah, that's where the open window was right there,
right?
Too. Yeah,
yes,
yeah.
Yes. So they're saying, the official sources say the shot came from the open window, not from the guy who's dead on the roof. By the way, I'm just showing you, like, this is the official story as it unfolds. Now, this looks like Wall Street Journal. Again, might be National Geographic or someplace. But again, this is widely circulated. He's on the wrong part of the building. He should be over here. Should be over here. And it makes all the triangles and the triangulations and the calculations all different. Okay? Now, if this official story with the graphic guy in the wrong place, shooting at Trump from the wrong place, if this explains all the people shot in the crowd, then we definitely have something to look into. Why hasn't anyone noticed these egregious errors being proliferated across millions and millions of people who now think they know about this and they've been misinformed? Here's the Today Show. Where do they got the body? The wrong place, right? Wrong building. Again. So again, here's where he was. Here's the ladder. Here's a parking lot down here in the bottom. Trump is over here, okay? And there's a ladder in the picture. So everyone thinks he went behind these shrubs, he put a ladder there, and he climbed up. Maybe, but if he surveilled the location ahead of time, they said he visited the location to plan it, right? Why didn't he see this milk crate next to this air conditioner, next to this awning, and in 4 steps you're on the roof, and you don't need to go to Home Depot and bring a 12-foot ladder when you only bought a 5-foot ladder, right? So let me go to the next slide. There's 1, 2, 3, 4. If you zoom in on this part of the building, that's what I did. Milk crate to air conditioner to awning, and you're up there. You don't even have to be athletic. In fact, those guys who had trouble getting on the roof to catch this guy afterwards, like they could have done the same thing. You could have spotted this from Google Earth. You don't even need to go to the location, right? So now as we get into it, we're going to get to the clips later that analyze the sound that's on all these different recordings of everyone's different video footage of that day. But it helps to understand that there's a dead guy here on the roof with a pool of blood and a murder scene that they clean up, right? Or a death scene from the guy they whacked. They had to clean that up, pick up the shell casings, clear off any things, do some DNA tests real quick to figure out who it was. But all the time, you got this window over here with a bunch of people with highly trained sniper equipment, who happen to match up with all these other graphics of where a shot came from. So getting into that, we could get into it. We got a couple more clips. Also, I want to invite you guys, just as I did to the audience earlier today, VIP Summit 4. It's the very independent producer summit. It's September 7th. It's noon Eastern, and it's all about saying no to the NWO. And I want to make sure Clip Genie's part of that, because that's part of how we say no to the NWO for sure. So if you guys want to register for that, it's no fee. Is it not coming back up? Oh, it's in my slides. That's why. universityofreason.com/autonomy-vip-summit-4. I'll get a rebrandly or a shorter link, but that's, for early adopters, you don't mind because you're nerds. All right, cool. Now, with all that being said, any commentary on those graphics? Did you notice that all the graphics put the guy in the wrong place and on the wrong end of the roof? Like, he'd be like sloped down on that slopey roof, by the way. He'd be head first. Like, it doesn't even make any sense, and yet everyone buys it without even, like, so that's them showing. If we can put a graphic out that's graphically wrong and no one says anything to it, like, they know they've got the audience on autopilot. But I see those things and I'm like, whoa, what? How are people not calling this out? And a few people, yes, they do notice, but we need to tell the others for sure when we notice these things. So what did you think?
Yeah, I mean, that's such a great observation. Like, I was so captivated by the amazing animations and special effects. I was like, whoa, I even wrote a note. I'm like, wow, this is impressive. You know what I mean? Like, so yeah, they cast a spell with just draping up the illusion that this is, hey, we're very authoritative. Look how quickly we created this very high level graphic animation that explains everything. So it has to be the authoritative source on it. But yeah, completely wrong position to the point where, like, I've seen him on the roof and it looks like he's almost like further back, like towards the edge of the roof. And in my mind, even though there's not that much slope of a roof, despite what Secret Service would lead you to believe, like, it almost feels like he wouldn't even be able to get a clear line of sight. Like, as far back as he is on the roof, it feels like the roof slopes up enough to where his rifle wouldn't have even allowed him to have a clear line of sight. So
no, he had to crawl up past that. I think that's when he was crawling up and they're like, hey, there's a guy on the roof. And then he tried to get in position and shoot real quick.
I think we need to ask about that picture of him on the roof, though. Why? Yeah. Like, why are there no pictures of anybody else? Obviously, the gun is quite a ways away from the body. There's one image I have in mind. So how's it get that far away? And had anybody been on the roof at that point yet? Why don't we have picture of people on the roof with him? I don't know. I think that's something to keep in mind.
Well, what they do is, like, they have pictures of the evidence and whatever was there, but they don't release it right away. So they let people speculate. And then, like, 3 weeks from now, they'll be like, here's the 7 shell casings and here's some other stuff. So they do that too, right? So there's some legitimate evidence they've collected. They're just not sharing with the public, right? Like the whole thing of how they couldn't identify him, couldn't get into his phone, send his phone to Quantico. They couldn't break in when, like, you could look up, here's the Israeli software that you use to crack the phones and here's the hardware you use with it. Like, it's a very doable thing. And the FBI can't figure that out. Like, what's up with that? Right. So, and then they get into it and they're like, oh, he had 3 hidden foreign accounts. We'll get to these claims of Iran being, assassination friendly, and he plays into whatever their claim is. It's retarded. So that's why we have to look at this and weigh it and then dismiss as arbitrary many of these things might be. Lawrence, if they always put them on the same part of the roof incorrectly, that it doesn't even make sense. Do you think that could be an honest mistake? Because like my observation would be when they did the NIST report about World Trade Center 7, they did not go to the crime scene, collect evidence, build a model from that evidence and represent it. Same thing in AI tele. You didn't take evidence from the scene and make a 3D representation. You took the official story and made it into a graphic representation without the evidence.
Right.
Yeah. And it's so interesting how I hadn't heard about the open window theory about how that was a potential, obviously, yeah, a place where someone could take cover and take shots and act a lot more discreetly, but then making the connection of how all of the media portrayals of the trajectory of the bullet points back to that building, not the building where Crooks was at, dude. That's wild.
It's like if they wanted to move Oswald in the book depository to the grassy knoll to cover those shots. Like, no, see, it lines up. Like he also took those shots. But when we hear a video that we're going to hear in a little bit, like when you hear it from Trump's stage, all the shots sound like they came from the same place. They're just at a different cadence, right? And a little bit different. So anyway, when you hear it from someplace else in the arena, the park there, you can hear shots over there and shots coming from over here. Like you can clearly hear the difference between the cadences and the distances. I'm not claiming they're different size calibers or different armaments, right? I don't have that data, but what I can tell you is forensic analysis of the mathematics of the situation, given the audio that all those devices collected, is a doable thing. It's one of the few places we can have some certainty in the situation. So
could we draw a straight line from where that firefighter, what's his name, Comparatori, was hit to Trump's ear and then just trace that back? Can we find exactly the pinpoint position where he was sitting in the bleachers?
Well, that's interesting because one of the analyses that I have to share with you guys later shows that shots were taken from approximately 140 yards, 140 feet, 800 feet, and 1,400 feet. Mm-hmm. And then when you take the mathematics and that precision algebra that's down to, you're off by feet, but not yards, right? So the uncertainty is reasonably small. And then you take from where Trump was or where the acoustic device that captured it was, and then you draw circles, right? So here's the circle of 150, and where's a place in there that you can take the shot? There's the AGR building. Now there's the 800 feet echo. Where's that? Well, that does cover the water tower. That would be a plausible place. And then there's the 1,400-foot echo, because there's one shot where like you hear the snap and the report for the gun came from a lot further away. There is at least one building with a clear line of sight that was not guarded that is 1,400 feet away from that place where Trump stood. And that line of sight might also cover a Corey contemporary, I think is maybe how you pronounce his name, the fire chief, who also had some other interesting life experiences as well. So that tragedy right there, if no one would have died at that event, it'd be much ado about nothing, and no one would be looking into this. So because there is not just two people in the hospital, but be someone who died protecting their family from the assassin who's trying to kill the former president, that has drawn a lot more people's attention to this event. For better or worse, for the deep state, who has tried to like kind of do this. It didn't work out, and write their sorry note, get out of jail free card. Let me just write a note to the SEC. Those are mistaken transactions type of thing that they're doing. And I think it's important for us who are alive and witness to this at this present time to like put this on the record and share it for a day later, that we might want to understand what happened back during this time in history with much more clarity than they're ever going to tell you about. Because that lack of clarity is their power over you. If you know exactly what was going on better than they're telling you, then you're in control of your own life and your own progression through that life. So,
yep, exactly. Yeah. And if you guys want a kind of a visual representation of possibly what we're seeing, is go watch the very first scene in The Dark Knight, right? The scene in The Dark Knight, the bank robbery scene with the Joker, where it's like, once the one guy finishes his job, the guy behind him takes him out, and they all take each other out. And really, in the essence of Grand Theft World, it's the bad guys that are hopping on the school bus and driving away with all the cash. You know what I'm saying? And the only other thing I'd like to say too is, like, I'm sure that they gave whoever fired those shots, like, you do not pull the trigger until 6:11. Has to be 6:11. Has to be 6:11. Little 9/11 encoding there. You know what I'm saying? Like, yeah.
Just a little bit. Just a little bit. We'll get into the Mandela effect and Back to the Future memes later tonight when we cover all the news. Twice a year, I teach a course called Autonomy. It's a 12-week course. It teaches leadership, entrepreneur skills, executive skills, all these types of things that I saw were taken out of our education system in order to make the schooling or indoctrination system that we've all probably went through. And it has served us well enough to be interchangeable cogs in the machine of the globalists. But if we want a homestead, if we want write our own ticket, work from home job, work from anywhere type of situation, they're not exactly handing those out at the end of college. They give you a piece of paper and they're like, good luck. So reality is dropping us off here, but the demands of reality are up here. So I created Autonomy to help people close that gap for themselves so they can level up their skills to the demands of the situations that life is putting in front of us presently. Life's demands of intellect and understanding precision and complexity are ever increasing. The schooling didn't prepare us for it. The media's... What makes the Grand Theft World podcast unique, invigorating, exciting, and informative? Most other podcasts out there are either doing straight up interviews or they're just covering the daily news. They're covering current events from the day they happened. And that is effective. It's useful. It's a great starting point. And then sometimes these current events change during the week past the first story. So we like to give it a little time. You have to wait till some of the dust settles on these stories in order to give them accurate coverage. And the other thing that's really missing in the media landscape is covering the articles that are coming out every day. That's great. That's necessary. But who's bringing in contextual history so that you can understand what has been going on for decades and decades to lead up to the machinations and actions that we see unfolding today? So what we do here on the podcast is we cover current events. Many of these things are censored, but we wait about a week. As a forensic historian, I focused mainly through my career on the history of globalism and collectivism and things that they call maybe the New World Order. There's a lot of facts to these sort of circumstances, groups, events, activities, working groups that they've had over time. So for Grand Theft World listeners, we not only break down the current events, most of which that are censored during the week, we provide you with contextual history, we give you the source notes, the references, we do deep dives, and this really empowers you with an understanding of context and history so that you can make more informed decisions in your life. There's also a community, a membership where you guys can actually ask questions and we can get into the show and we can share evidence. And there's a town hall weekly for Grand Theft World for those who listen to it and are interested in covering the stories that we don't get to during a 6-hour show. Listening to it an hour a day, you could easily consume the week's news, but you're going to have substance and meaning and context and understanding. And with that, you can make higher quality decisions in your life. So if you're interested in more quality in your life, go to grandtheftworld.com, click podcast at the top, and we'll see you there. Thank you.
These allegations are false.
This isn't Grand Theft Auto, folks. This isn't a video game.
What are the most surprising things that you discovered once you started pulling on that thread? Who he was connected to, what institutions he was influential over, what events he participated in?
Come on, man. What are we talking about? Come on, man. No.
You don't have to think about it, dude.
I got this quote because you said you didn't know much about Klaus Schwab. I made it my job to, as soon as this happened, I'm like, okay, this guy's their front man. Let me learn about the official history of the World Economic Forum. I got their 40-year history. I got every book that Klaus Schwab has written or ghostwritten. I went through those books. This is one of the most interesting passages.
Come on, man. Come on.